All right. So we are recording. Guys, I am so excited to sit down. I actually just said to Lisa before we hopped on the call that I was really excited that I felt like I get my own little personal nutrition counseling today. But I'm going to let Lisa introduce herself. We have known each other for a good couple years now, a little
Mhm.
over that. She works for my alma mater, Iowa State. And so kind of connected through that, connected through Beauty Counter. And now she just made an exciting career transition where she is going into full-time practice by herself and getting to kind of run her own schedule. So I feel like I want to like cheerlead anybody who does that. It's a big leap. I know it's a big leap of faith, but I've been so encouraged by watching you, and all the content that you share is actually, it's just a breath of fresh air. I think a lot of us have some sort of strange past with our body. I think it's almost impossible, maybe you can speak to this, to come out of our culture unscathed without any, baggage as it relates to body image. And you really bring this fresh perspective to your nutrition counseling and to what you do. So I'd love for you to first of all introduce yourself, and then we'll dive into talking about some of the topics we wanted to cover today.
Yes. Well, thank you for that very nice introduction. So yeah, so I've been a registered dietitian for 12 years now. It'll be 12 years next month. I'm like doing the math in my
Yeah,
head.
time flies, doesn't it?
It does. It's frightening how fast it goes. And so when I first started off as a dietitian, well, backing up a little bit, my history of like getting into food and nutrition really started. I grew up on a farm, so always had an interest in where food came from. And then growing up on a farm, my mom always made big but balanced, like big and balanced family dinners. And there was like, no matter what we were doing, like everyone had to eat dinner together at the table, no matter what. And so I kind of, my cooking interest developed there. And then I was really into track and cross country in high school. So the nutrition part kind of came along. And thankfully, that is dietetics, the food plus the nutrition. And so I went to Iowa State and then thought that I would work as a clinical dietitian in a hospital, and then did that in my internship and did not like it, worked in school food service, and then came to Iowa State and worked there for 8 years. And that's really where I really learned about intuitive eating and the struggles that people have with their body, as I worked with these a lot of young females. Of course, there are males as well, but a lot of young females in that college age population who are for the first time living on their own and maybe don't know what it's like to prepare and cook their own meals, and this huge lack of skills that what I grew up learning from my own mom, a lot of people for various reasons didn't pick up on that, or didn't learn that from their household, wherever they grew up. And then lots of body image issues, as particularly women are transitioning from being what essentially is a childlike body. Even when you're 18, your body is still growing and developing. You're probably not going to get any taller, but there's definitely bone development still happening, a lot of developmental things. And so college females come in as a freshman and think that they should have, once they're 18, it's like they think their body should not change anymore, which is so not true. But they're fed this kind of lie from social media in particular, and have this developed this belief that their body shouldn't change and whatnot. And so then in college, I recognized how students would maybe live in the dorms their freshman year, have food prepared for them, and then they'd either move into maybe a sorority or an apartment or a house with friends, and suddenly they would need to prepare their own meals, which for some that just, it was a lot of confusion. So in my job at Iowa State, I did a lot of like kind of basic what I would call like basic nutrition education, and then had my very first eating disorder client, had literally no experience working with eating disorders, maybe 2 days in undergrad of education about it, had no idea what I was doing, but my heart was forever changed by working with that particular student. And I realized then, as I was trying to help her get through the rest of her semester, because she had scholarships and she really couldn't leave to go into a higher level of care, which is what we call like any form of like residential partial hospitalization and getting that like really high level care for an eating disorder, I needed to help her to be able to get to the end of the semester so she didn't lose her scholarship. And dived into like what is kind of now my philosophy, which is really like all these factors. Everyone has certain kind of like most health conditions. We all have certain things genetically that we can't help, but there are triggers or things that kind of make that condition come out more, so to speak. And in terms of like disordered eating, eating disorders, body image, a lot of us are genetically prone to it by different traits that we have. And then certain things can kind of exacerbate it or make it worse. And so even women who have what I would consider to be, for example, myself, I grew up in a household where we didn't really talk about bodies or weight actually at all. It was just never a thing. I will also say my parents, being farmers, very active, and weight has never been a problem in my immediate family. And so I recognize now that was like a privilege that I had growing up, that we didn't talk about it because none of us struggled with it. And so, but even then, having grown up in what I would consider to be a very like normal, healthy relationship with food and bodies, of course, I'm still a woman and exposed to the same things everyone else are. And so there's definitely a time when I look back in my younger years where I probably didn't have an eating disorder, but there was definitely some food restriction going on. And I was saying it was in the name of like my running, because I was really into running. And then it was like, it can be this very slippery slope. And I see it happen a lot, especially now as many of us are aware of where our food is coming from and are questioning things like, should I be eating organic? What does organic really mean? Should I be cutting out gluten because I'm struggling with XYZ and I've read that gluten can eliminate that? It's really challenging to navigate all of those messages on social media and from friends and family even. I feel like friends and family can be almost more challenging than social media because they're close to us and they know how to like sometimes hit a nerve, or maybe they don't mean to, but they do. And then you throw in motherhood, becoming a mom, raising kids. That's that's like a whole other set of challenges that can come with like wanting to take care of yourself, wanting to feed your family in the right way, wanting to raise kids that have a healthy, normal relationship with food in their bodies, and also recognizing what we do at home is kind of a protective bubble, and our kids are still going to go out into the world and have to navigate things on their own, which is like scary, but knowing that like as a parent, doing everything you can at home to give them that like good foundation with food and body image and all of that. So
oh my gosh, just even listening to you talk, it's like you're unpacking and leading down 5 different paths in a good way, but also in an overwhelming way where I think most people do. I mean, as we just sit here, I'm like, well, yeah, you're right. Because there's that, and there's that, and there's that, and there's that. And it is this like tangled ball that it's not one thing. I think in some ways that's encouraging as a mom to hear, because I've heard all those messages about what do I say to my girls, what I don't say to my girls. We don't say the word fat, we don't talk about bodies, we do this.
Right.
It is actually sometimes freeing now to hear you say like, hey, you can still grow up and your parents maybe did everything right.
Right.
It's still that there is this external pressure that we cannot insulate ourselves. And so our kids might still have a weird relationship at some point, and that's not all on us as parents. Right. It's not like you parented this way, success, you parented this way, your kids fail. Okay. So, I mean, I think about myself as I went into, I was at Iowa State. If I would have walked into your office, you would have been mortified back in the day because, I went to Iowa State and your body does change. And I will say, like, I lived on tons of cardio and pretty much ate, now that I look back, probably 1,200 calories worth of protein bars mainly, until I would binge eat cereal in the sorority at 10:30 or 11 or 1 a.m. And I just think about that now, and I'm like, no wonder I didn't feel good. I didn't look good. I wasn't at my healthiest. And so I think it's a weird time for people. And so how do you there are all this external pressure, right? And there's all of these conversations going around. There's all these conversations about what you do and do not eat. Oh, there's no bad foods. No, there is bad food. Body neutrality, body positivity. I mean, how do people sort through all of the muck?
Yes. So it's very, I just want to like validate that everyone, I think, especially women, men do struggle with this, but it's absolutely women much more so because we have, I feel women have more and different types of pressure on them in general. But so I think the first step, and this is what I teach my clients too, is the first step is actually like, it's like acknowledging like that this is the body that you have. So that is step one. It's not saying I give up. It's not saying I don't care about my body. I don't care about my health. It's just saying like, oh, this is the body that God gave me. And like, that is step one. I can't change that. Like, this is the body I have. Now, step two is more like what I call body awareness. So developing an awareness of what foods don't make me feel good, what foods give me energy. Am I feeling super tired in the afternoon? What does that mean? Like, what can I change? Or like more like kind of, I say like collecting, it's like collecting data for an experiment. Body awareness is like,
So do you suggest like in that process, is that journaling? Is it like writing
mhm,
things down? The difference between tracking food, which I'm sure you have thoughts about, like,
right,
obsessively tracking
right.
versus just like making observations. Like, what does that look
Yes.
like?
Yes. So I highly recommend morning journaling. Like, I feel it's something that is important for mental health, physical health. Again, especially for moms who have a lot going on in their brain, literally like a 10-minute writing, like whatever comes to mind. And included in that is like, how did I feel yesterday? Some people do this in the evening. I'm a morning person and I like to start the day with a clear head, but some people do it in the evening, just like a brain dump, like how do I feel today? Like, do I feel bloated? Do I feel swollen? Do I feel sore? Do I feel energetic? And actually connecting that to a big piece of this that I think has been very not misaligned, well, kind of, but like women have cycles, right? So like if we're on, many of us don't take birth control or we're not using
Yeah.
hormonal birth control, connecting to where you're at in your cycle can be extremely insightful
Yes.
for being like, I don't feel energetic during the last half of my cycle, or like,
Right. Like, I
I'm
can't do high intensity cardio at this point, and I can lean into that because of
exactly,
where I'm at in my cycle. Or I can't wear the
exactly,
pair of jeans I normally wear this
right,
time. Your body is in flux in every
right,
month. And I think being in
yeah,
tune to that makes a big difference too. It's not that you ate something wrong or whatever.
exactly,
Yeah.
yeah. And I feel like it's something that like I'm hoping more and more people, like women, start to learn about their cycle and like all of that, because I feel like it is like a hidden source of information that many of us have ignored for our entire life for
Yeah.
various reasons.
Absolutely. So as people are doing this journaling process and as you're talking with people, I think I love that you're a little bit sassy online. I mean, you have a little bit of zip to you. And I like that. And so, how do people sort out? So there's different foods that do make us feel good and
Right.
don't make us feel good. But I kind of tend to be of the mindset that like this widespread nobody
Mhm.
can eat gluten, or this widespread that nobody can eat dairy, or most people can't. Like, I kind of tend to be a little skeptical of that.
Mhm.
How do people in this day of like everybody has a food label sort out kind of what works for them, what doesn't work for them, et cetera, as they're kind of hearing all these messages of like, diets and eating styles and
Mhm.
everything? It's a lot. There's a lot of noise out there.
Yeah. So before ever going down any path of like eliminating a food or trying some very specific like nutrition lifestyle change, such as cutting out gluten without any other, just like, I'm just going to cut this out, or like a thing that I see a lot in the younger like college students is like, I'm going to become vegan.
Yeah.
I believe in it for ethical reasons. I want to save the planet, like this, that, and the other thing, without doing the research of like what is nutritionally necessary to have a high quality vegan diet.
Right.
So I actually, for everyone, like regardless, I should have brought my copy to my desk, but the intuitive eating like workbook is a workbook that no matter what you're struggling with, I do believe going through that workbook, which is like basically like letting go of all the rules while you heal your relationship with food and learn how to take care of yourself. I believe that has to happen first. And then if you are struggling, I haven't shared this really with many people, but I'm going to share it with you because
Okay.
it's going to be an interesting like journey as I go through this. Like I was just diagnosed with Hashimoto's,
Okay.
which is like my body's destroying my thyroid.
Yeah.
And I'm very early stages, but there were signs and symptoms. I knew something was not right. Both my regular doctor and my gynecologist, OB, whatever, for months, like have been like, you're just getting older. You're tired because you've got kids and you're running a business. Oh, your joints are swollen and your fingers are so swollen you can hardly get your wedding ring off. Oh, you just need to drink more water. I'm like, you don't understand. I'm like, I
Right.
know my body very well at this point in my life.
It's not right.
Something is not right.
Yeah.
And this kind of side story, but like I went to a functional medicine doctor because I knew I would be heard a bit more that way. And I'm probably going to have to do a 4-week elimination diet to reduce my symptoms and then add food. And then I can add foods back in. But I'm like, this is so, I had this moment of like, oh my God, my goodness, like I'm this intuitive eating dietitian and I might have to like go on an elimination diet. Like,
Yeah.
oh my gosh, like this is going to throw my, like all my clients are going to not trust me. And then I'm like, okay. So I like had a few days of like spiraling and then I was like, no, this is a good, like this is a true test of me being able to eat intuitively while perhaps having to maybe eliminate a food for a while or a few foods and then add them back in and recognizing and truly doing the experiment of like, how does my body function best? What foods reduce my symptoms so that I don't want to sleep from 2 p.m. until my kids go to bed. I mean, I've been at the point where I can like hardly function towards the end of the day because I'm so exhausted, which is like the most annoying symptom of all when you have kids. Like you can't
Don't have time for
like,
it.
you don't got time for it. And so, but regardless, I feel like personally, because I have this foundation of having a good relation. I mean, of course, everyone always has those days where they're like, I don't love my body. But in general, having a healthy relationship with my body and with food, I'm able to say like, okay, when I do this elimination diet, I'm going to start it in a week.
Right.
I'm like, I know that this is something that is short term. And once I figure out exactly what my triggers are, then I can remove those. And along this process, I've already planned like, how am I going to talk to my kids about this? Because if we're having dinner and like I'm not eating something that I normally would eat, I'm going to explain like I'm doing this experiment, my body hasn't been feeling right, and I will be able to add more food back in a few weeks.
Right.
Because I don't want them to think that I'm like purposely restricting or anything like that. But when you know your body well enough, like over time, being able to connect like the physical part of your body with like the emotions and all of that kind of thing, I actually believe that's why I was able to catch it pretty early and why my doctors kept pushing it away, because the initial lab work looked fine. It wasn't until I went to functional medicine and they drew a very extensive panel of labs that they were like, you're very early stages, but like this is what's going on.
Well, because the first time I mean, I haven't done anything super restrictive in many years, but when I was breastfeeding Truett, he was super fussy, and I was at my wit's end, and I thought, okay, I'm going to try, and I cut out pretty much anything that was like, potentially a trigger. I mean, evidently oats can be chickpeas. Like, I mean, I was eating like nothing, and I was happy to do it just in effort to see, does it make a difference? But it was also really great for me because it affirmed my body does great with all food and
Right.
nothing really
Yes.
bothers me, because when I
Yes.
added it all back in, it wasn't the magic bullet for Truett and
Right.
it wasn't the magic bullet for me. And I realized actually I have a lot more freedom in all those things.
Right.
None of it was really bothersome to me. I felt no better, no worse with, all the
Yeah.
different foods that I like to eat. So talk to me a little bit, to identify, because I've always been somebody who naturally gravitates. I was vegetarian for many, many
Mhm.
years. Then kind of got to the point where I felt like, okay, I can add chicken or a hamburger in when I
Right.
want to, but I naturally just don't really prefer a lot of meat. However, as somebody who works out a lot, like let's say people are looking for a performance-based improvement, right? So I run a lot. I lift a lot. I notice when I occasionally will dip into like, oh, I'm going to track just how much protein I'm getting or something like that. I tend to kind of run on the low side. So if somebody wants to
Mm.
see a performance based improvement, like how do you manage that with like, okay, intuitively, my body says, I'm going to eat not that much
Right.
protein. But I also recognize, yeah, when I do bump that up, I feel a little bit better. I think I have more endurance. I'm lifting, I'm kind of feeling my body. So for people who do, maybe it's not appearance based, but it's performance
Mhm.
based, how do you balance the two?
So, I do think that with like, because I have a couple of friends who are sports dietitians, and I believe, and based on the things that like they say and the things that they share online, you can absolutely like still eat intuitively, but when there specifically is a performance based thing, and like running, for example, because running is like my love,
Yeah.
um, like there are times where you do have to eat things that maybe don't sound the most appetizing, but you know that from a functional, like, I have to do this because I'm training for a 10K or half marathon, or like, I really want to lift heavier. Like, I want to get more muscle mass so I can keep up with my kids and whatever.
Right.
You have to eat things that aren't like, don't necessarily sound good. Um, and that's part of the like not fun and not sexy part of like intuitive eating. And I think the reason I've started saying like gentle nutrition and calling myself a gentle nutritionist is because the term intuitive eating has actually, I think, gotten very convoluted, and
Yeah.
a lot of people do think that it means like eat whatever you want whenever you want, like don't second guess anything, and it's
My
like,
body's telling me ice cream for breakfast.
right, and it's like, no. And if you develop body awareness, you know that like I'm going to feel like crap if I have ice cream for breakfast and drink caffeine all day. Like, yes, I'm so busy, I don't have time for lunch, so I'm just going to skip it. And it's like, no, like you still have to eat lunch. That's not, it might not be fun. It's not fun to plan it. Like a lot of the women I work with are working moms, and like they're like, I don't have time to meal prep on the weekend, or I don't have time to do XYZ. And I get it. I do get it. And you can pack crackers and sliced lunch meat and a cheese stick and some fruit. Like something is better than nothing.
Mhm.
But the unsexy part of like gentle nutrition is planning to eat things like, okay, if I'm going to do a long run, or if I'm consistently increasing my mileage, even if it doesn't sound good, like I don't necessarily want to eat a steak with my salad that I love having big salads in the summer and like just
Right.
lighter food. It's like that's, you can have that, and you're still going to have to add in some fat and actually, or some protein. The reason I said fat was because a lot of women don't get enough fat actually, especially like when someone is looking to get pregnant, and is maybe on like the side of like maybe BMI is a bit lower and like maybe perhaps not enough body fat, like getting enough dietary fat
Yeah.
is very essential as well.
Right.
Um, and so it might be like, I don't really like eating like heavy foods, and doesn't mean you have to eat like heavy foods, but things like hemp hearts are my new like,
Oh, they're so great.
they're like my new favorite thing that I add to
I
everything, because
sprinkle it
I'm
on
like,
everything. It's
yeah.
like on toast and on
Yeah.
salads and everything. Yeah.
It's like, it's just the perfect addition. They got omega 3s in them. So stuff like that, just like having that extra awareness, like I don't like the taste of protein powder. And like, I'm not saying people need to add protein powder to stuff,
Right.
but I do think there's a time and a place for it. And especially when someone is maybe not having enough energy or is really looking to increase like running or other forms of activity. Definitely. And even like in the latter half of your cycle, you typically need actually more calories in general, because your body is like doing more internal work with like going through the second half of your cycle. So that's an interesting thing too, is paying attention to like what types of foods is your body craving as you go through your cycle too.
Yeah, the Balanced Life had an awesome podcast about working out, and I'll have a whole post that goes with this. So I'll
Yeah,
have these
yeah.
links, but they had a great post about just nutrition and working out to work with your body too, with
Yes.
wherever you're at too. So I think it's important to be evaluating the kinds of exercise we do. I mean, most of us are not like high performance athletes. So, being cognizant of that too, and saying like there's a time to push yourself, but then there's also a
Mhm.
time to say like, okay, maybe today is not the day. Maybe yoga is just fine, or
Yeah.
whatever it is, something more gentle. So I think a lot of people are, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, a lot
Mhm.
of people are probably living at a weight or aspiring to a weight that is outside of where they probably naturally would land. And, my husband and I love to talk about this. He says, we can get 90% of the way somewhere, but that last 10% might require 20 times more effort than the first 90. And
Yes.
that's the law of diminishing return, right?
Right.
Like, okay, for me, I'm a great example. Like, I have been this, honestly, I kind of matured very quickly. And I am
Mhm.
now in the same height and weight that I was in high school because I
Yeah.
matured quickly.
Yeah.
In college, I wasn't healthy. I was
Right.
above what is healthy for me, but my body just settled. And this is
Right.
kind of where I just settle when I'm eating
Yep.
a healthy lifestyle. Now, could I work that extra 10% to get the six pack or whatever?
Right.
I'm sure I could, but it would require so much effort and energy
Yes.
and restriction. So, how do people know though? Because I think it's scary for people to think, I might gain a little weight. And so that's
Mhm.
probably a message you're delivering to people sometimes. Like, your body might not settle where you want it to
Right.
settle. And so how do people come to grips with that?
Yes. So that is honestly probably one of the most challenging things for both like a woman to struggle with, like mentally, but then also as a clinician or as a clinician, health professional, it's hard. It's my job to help someone internally see it themselves. Like I can tell someone until I'm blue in the face, like everybody has a set point and like we all tend to hover around that when we are treating our body with respect, getting good quality sleep, eating in a way that's nourishing, like all of these things that are outside of our control, like environmental things. I firmly believe there's a lot of things in our environment that make people gain weight that they wouldn't necessarily gain otherwise. Things like plastic, the use of plastics. Like, I mean, beauty counter, we all there's a reason beauty counter exists. It's because the personal care product industry is not well regulated, and things in the products that we use can disrupt our hormone system, which can cause us to gain weight. Constant high stress causes us to gain weight. Think all sorts of other things too. Um, but typically with like thinking about like where is your body happiest at in terms of weight is where, and I have this continuum. It's not something I made, it's from a research study, but it's basically this weight continuum that shows like high effort, high energy, like where your weight settles at versus like natural, like moderate levels of activity, moderate paying attention to nutrition and fueling yourself and taking care of yourself and good quality sleep. And how like there is, I mean, it's basically exactly what you said, like 90% you can get to this point, and if you wanted to make like go this extra mile, like for some people it's like lose 10 to 30 pounds. And like, for example, okay, I have this client who she was born in a bigger body. She has a bigger body. No matter what she does, like her body tends to gravitate towards this larger size. And so our work together has been mainly around like taking care of herself with nutrition in a way that gives her the energy she needs, but also like working on the body image component. the smallest size that she ever wore. To get to that size, she had to do Kosama, which is like high intensity workouts, 6 days a week, eating like rice cakes and like peanut butter. And it consumed her entire life. And that was the smallest she ever got. And as soon as she scaled back on those workouts, she like instantly, gained back a ton of weight and then had to deal with people commenting about that. And so that was a perfect example of like,
Right.
she can be at that smaller size that she always wanted to be at, but it required so much. I mean, she was exhausted, tons of time away from her husband and her daughter, and like it just was not compatible with how she wanted to live her life, because she didn't want to be only eating rice cakes and doing all that working out. And so now we're working on like moving her body in ways that feel good on a daily basis, and also the nutrition side of fueling herself consistently, because she developed this habit of like feeling badly about herself, then restricting food, then over exercising. And it was like this vicious cycle that honestly damaged her metabolism. And so her weight, her set point now is probably always going to be a bit higher than it was, because she damaged her metabolism. Which is
And that's
another.
so hard in a society that, what happens when people lose a bunch of weight or are at that thinnest, quote unquote, healthiest point. I mean, they get praise, they get told that they look great, they get, shows like The Biggest Loser and all that. It's like,
Yes.
oh my goodness. And we're all I'm sure you're for celebrating health and wellness,
Right.
but that comes in many sizes and shapes
Yes.
and
Right.
looks differently. I remember it was after Ainsley was born, and we went to Lake Tahoe, and I was doing this carb cycling program, and I find nutrition really interesting. So part of me is like, oh, it's fun to, if we tinker this, like, how would that, it's a hobby sort of. So it's kind of, but I look back and all I remember from that trip was, yeah, did I look amazing? Absolutely. But I was miserable. I was snappy at my husband because I was trying to find the exact right foods for exact high carb day, low carb day, high protein day. And I was not a fun person to be around because it was so consuming. And so I think just thinking, yeah, like you said, is it compatible with my life? And, life with kids, do I have the energy I need? A lot of times I'll come back to that and say, do I feel energetic today? Do I feel good in my body? Like, and if I do, then really what else matters, right? Like, can I do what I need to do? Is my body performing the way I want it to perform? And do I feel generally good and energetic, right? Rather than like we look in the mirror and determine whether or not we feel good, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And it sounds to me like you have really good body awareness. Like you understand what makes you feel good, what doesn't make you feel good. You can decipher between like, is this worth the energy or is it not? And for you, like, you're probably also someone who, like, if something is going on with your health, you can probably tell pretty quickly, like, if something's going on. And what a gift that is, because I think that most of the women I work with don't have that. And that's like really what we have to work on first, because when someone has developed this cycle of not trusting their body, not trusting their hunger cues, for example, hunger and fullness cues, like second guessing that, being like, well, I can't eat until this time because it's like, like it's I'm supposed to eat lunch at noon, but it's like 10:45 and I'm starving. Well, I'm not going to eat until
That's like
noon.
me at 10:45 every day. I'm like, it's lunchtime.
Right. Yeah. No. And so then it's like you eat lunch because you're hungry. And then that in turn tells your body, I can trust her. I can trust her that when I tell her I'm hungry or when I tell her I'm full, she's going to honor that, which like is again this like positive cycle of like your body trusts you. So, and like, yeah. So it
Like,
is.
you can eat past 6 p.m. You can eat carbs before bed. Like, I don't know. I feel like we need to evangelize all these sort of things that have been so like fear mongered into our society of like, I love like a big snack before bed. Like, it helps me sleep well. And I feel good. And I think there's so much of this, like we need to be fasting large amounts of time and we need to do all this sort of stuff that Yeah, it makes it less about the life we live. And I'm
Right.
looking outside and I see my kids out there and whatever,
Yeah.
and more about like surrounding all about the way we look and the food we
Right.
eat, which I think is what you want to help people get freed up
Yeah.
from, right?
Yeah. Because everyone, I mean, everyone deserves to enjoy food. Like that's part of the reason like why I do what I do is because I freaking love food. Like
Yeah.
I love to cook it. I don't necessarily love planning it. Becoming a mom has made it not as much fun.
It's
That
not
part
as much fun to do
it
any of it
no.
anymore.
I used to love strolling the grocery store by my, pre-kids and like, oh, I'm gonna make this. And like I would spend like an hour making dinner at night. And it's
Cookbooks and
yeah,
everything.
yeah. It's like, no, that doesn't happen. We're just in the phase where that's not gonna happen.
Yep.
That's okay. Um, and but I when I meet women that are like terrified of food or are feel guilty and shame and cannot go somewhere and go out with their friends for like Mexican food and without like looking at the menu ahead of time, analyzing the calories, figuring out like this, that, and the other thing, and they're totally not present then when they're like out with their friends or with their husband or whatever. It's like it literally makes me so sad because I believe food is like one of the greatest gifts that we have. I think it connects all humans. This food does because we all have to eat, just like we all have a body. We're all always going to have to eat and have a body every single day. Um, and that's why it's so important to, I feel, if someone is struggling to start working, whether it's like start working through the intuitive eating workbook or start just kind of developing that body awareness because it's not like something like alcohol where you can say like, if you're
No.
going like,
Yeah.
I'm just not going to do it. I'm just not going to drink alcohol. I'm going to stay away from it. No, you have to eat every day. You have to make choices with food every day. You live in your body. You can't escape it. Um, and I think that's also what makes it so hard. And then we're bombarded. It's like we have our own internal stuff, and then social media seems to know like what you're struggling with, and then it like throws in like I get ads all the time, like on my browser for like weight loss things, not because I'm looking for weight loss, but because like it knows through the types of
Talk
messaging
about
that I
food.
do.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Like I don't need
Right.
this. I don't need this like weight loss supplement ad popping up. Thank you.
And over the last year, I think it's been more apparent than ever, when we're not just talking about food, but I think we as a society have a really hard time finding a middle ground, right? We have a really hard time
Yes.
with moderation in anything we do,
Yes.
right? And so food is like that part where you got to figure it out, right?
Yeah.
You got to figure out moderation
Yeah.
if you want to live a healthy, well life and feel good. But
Right.
it's, yeah, like you said, it's complicated. It's hard to do.
It's hard.
And it requires a little bit of work and a
Right.
little work inside too, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so tell me a little bit before we wrap up, because I want to be mindful of your
Mhm.
time. Tell me a little bit about the services you provide and kind of what you do through your nutrition counseling.
Yeah. So what I currently do is it's all virtual one-on-one nutrition counseling, and I call it it's called the Gentle Nutrition Intensive
Okay.
program. Is like the kind of the foundational program that I have. Right now, it's 4 months long, so women typically it's always been women, but like it's not that it's not for men. It's just
Right.
women tend to that's who comes through my virtual doors.
Yeah.
So we do one-on-one work together, working through like really like the body awareness piece, developing kind of body awareness, body respect, eventually body confidence, but those other things have to happen first. We kind of go through a lot of lifestyle things like what does a typical day look like for you? Are there things we can optimize specifically like protein, fiber, and fat are the things that I often see are lacking or what prevents someone from becoming satisfied during the day with food. Um, finding movement that feels good and movement that you're going to look forward to doing and syncing some of those things with your cycle if that's available to you. Some women are they don't have a cycle for one reason or the other. And then also basically going through all of the intuitive eating principles together for that accountability piece.
Yeah.
And so that's like an overview of how I work with women, and it's fun. It's a lot
And
of
who
fun.
would you say, like, okay, If someone came to you and said, here's a little bit of info about me, who would you say are the people who would resonate with maybe needing your services? Or how would
Mm.
somebody know if like, okay, this might be right for me?
So it's typically my clientele is women who are like stuck in the cycle of like either trying different diets and feeling really badly when the diets don't work, and women who are caught in like a binge and restrict cycle, which it may not be a like a true binge, but it could be something like not eating a lot during the day or during the week, and then on the weekend, this is where like a lot of college students like happens. They eat super healthy, work out a ton during the week, and then the weekend hits and it's like all alcohol and pizza and stuff like that. So women who are caught in the binge restrict cycle. I also do some family nutrition. A couple of my clients right now are family nutrition, so helping moms navigate picky eating and kind of working on mom's relationship with food in her body, and then working on the family, because if mom's not in a good place, the rest of the stuff, like, yes, you can still feed a healthy family, but like mom needs to be taken care of in order to provide those meals for the family. um so yeah, so some women who are like frustrated with like binging and restricting, or women who are sick of like dieting and they want to be healthy, they want to be well, but they're done with like the restrictive dieting, and so really learning how to take care of their body, find food
And can we
freedom.
hammer that home before we end? Like, diets inherently don't work. Like, I mean,
Right.
is that a good statement to
Yes.
say that they're not effective, even if you are looking for results? That's
Right.
not the most effective way to reach those results, right?
Yes, and ultimately dieting will lead to an increased body set point. And so it actually, while you may lose weight short term, you 95% of the time people gain it back, and then their set point is even higher, which is even more frustrating, which then starts the cycle all over again. So being able to stop that cycle and say, no, never again. I'm going to take care of my body. I'm going to find my natural set point that requires some effort, but not all of my effort and all of my energy, because I want to live my life. So
Absolutely. Anybody who tells me I have to measure peanut butter in teaspoons is like immediately off my list. I'm
I
like,
know.
guys, we got
Yeah,
their giant jar in our house every week.
I know. I know. Peanut butter, like I, I
Oh,
we have like it's like a jug. I mean, it is like the biggest thing Fairway sells. It's we consist a lot of our daily intakes on peanut butter, especially in the summer when we're like going to different events and stuff. It's like
right.
there's not time, but you can always have peanut butter and jelly sandwich. So,
Oh, and tell me,
so
if people want to find you on Instagram, where do they find you?
yes. So my Instagram handle is Gentle Nutrition RD,
Okay.
and my website is just lisanolting.com.
Okay.
And people can poke around on there. If someone is interested in like what it would be like to work with me, there's a link under services on my website to book a free discovery call where we really talk through what the person is looking for and if what I provide is a good fit for that.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much, Lisa, for spending some time
Thank
with us
you.
today. I mean, this was super helpful. I hope others resonate with it as much as I have. And guys, give her a follow because she's fantastic to follow online. She shares a lot of great stuff on Instagram that I love taking in. And it's always good to fill your feed with things that reflect what our values are, right? And so give her a follow. If you feel like you could benefit from her services, don't hesitate to check her out. And I appreciated our call today. I
Yes,
really
thank you. Thank you
know
so
it will
much.
help a lot of people.
Yeah, thank you, Madison. Take care.